When you go to teach level 6 scales, tell the students to turn to page 93 or 94 and look at major scale level 6, number 1. Scale number 1 is concert A flat for everyone except horns. Horns learn concert E flat first. Now, if you're not starting here at level 6 scales and your kids have already learned level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you probably don't need to start on concert A flat. You can just start at the top of the page and work your way through. But if you're starting here, then I would definitely start with the A flat scale first. Don't worry about explaining transposition to your students during scale time. Now, if you want to take another time, like by the time they're learning, little 4, 5, 6 scales, they're probably ready to hear about transpositions. But I've written a whole book so that you don't ever have to dig into that until you're ready. So you could go all the way up to these high school level scales and never talk about transpositions. You can just tell them what number of scale to play. If they're young, often they're not going to play the correct line. Like sometimes I'll get to this with my advanced 7th graders or 8th graders. They'll be playing these high school level scales, and sometimes they don't know what number I just said to them, even though I said it 7 times in a row. So just to get them to touch it and say, okay, we're going to play this scale, and then double check everybody around you, spot check the kids, make sure that they're on the same scale with you. When you do level 6 scales, you have to have at least 3 groups: 1 octave scales, 2 octave scales, and 3 octave scales. There are modifications where some people play them together. I just choose not to, because it's always good for me if I can hear students in a smaller group, ever smaller. Like I hear them individually a lot. That helps a lot, and also hearing just your clarinets or hearing just your flutes is going to help you. So having 3 groups for each scale shouldn't be a problem, and it goes by really fast if you get them into a pattern of how to do it. So model on your main instrument. Even if you're a high school band director, you're working with 12th graders, you still play better than them, and your sounds are better than their sounds and more mature. So you want to make sure that they can hear what a professional sounds like on their instrument. Or like I've always used a clavinova, because it helps them to hear what the in tune sound is. So if you can connect this idea of a level 6 scale all the way back through the whole process we've been through: written scale, chanting scale, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scales that you've already learned. And a great thing about these level 6 scales is that they're exactly the same as the scales defined by the GMA for the first round, 11th and 12th, all-state auditions. The addition that I've added to them is that they have fingering annotations. So that way your students know, okay, this is, like some of the things on the clarinet, like they don't know when to use the left pinky or the right pinky, or on one particularly difficult scale they actually have to start on the right pinky, switch to the left pinky while they're holding one note. So there's some things that are not present in those GMEA scales that you print off their website. So the fingering annotations will really help you, and also especially help your brass players play more in tune on their scales, and also just know, okay, this is the range where my instrument plays very flat. So encourage them to memorize these scales and play them over and over and over. The 2 major differences between a level 6 scale and a level 5 scale is that they're faster, 144 beats per minute, and then we've got more scales. We've added on 4 more scales, and I think some of them have an extended range above that of the level 5 scale. So you want to talk to your students about a key signature, even if they're a senior in high school. You want to keep hammering this concept home, because even in the wind ensemble, the top performing ensemble at South Forsyth High School, we still had kids who just somehow slipped through the cracks and didn't learn. Like they would have an aha moment in their senior year. Oh, that's how a key signature works. So it's worth your time to teach it over and over again as well as you can, and get them to touch things. It really helps them to actually touch the key signature, touch that B flat, touch each B flat in the scale, touch the E flat, touch each E flat in the scale. That has been one of the most effective things that I have had my students do. When teaching this scale, I like to model the fingerings on one instrument each time you repeat it. And for you, you may have to practice a lot to be able to if you don't know your 3 octave scale on a 3 octave C scale on a flute, you may have to practice your upper fingering so that you can grab that flute and show them. So you want to try to get around to all or most of the instruments before you move on, especially the first few times, because regardless of how old or young your students are, they learn a lot by seeing. They're going to watch you do it. A lot of them are visual learners, so if you can show them how the fingers move or how the slide moves, or go back there and air stick or play it on the marimba for them, then they're going to get it a lot quicker than if they just see it on the page and we practice it a million times. So while you're doing these things, you want them to air and finger. The students are going to form the shape of blowing out a candle with their lips, and then blow air continuously, not into the instrument. When it's going up the scale, you want them to articulate, and then when you come down, you want to slur. And talk to the trombone players about the technique of slurring on the trombone, how you gently articulate as you come down with a la or a da articulation. And then percussionists, you want to make sure that they start on the left hand and air stick above and go left, right, left, right. Don't let them be one-arm percussionists, okay? And then every time I model a scale, I have them either air and finger or say the letter names. And that saying of the letter names, even at this level, even when they're playing scales this hard, like if they got clarinets or getting up there and they're playing some of those 3-octave scales, it really helps them to say the letter name and not just have these weird fingerings memorized. They'll go, oh, that's an E. I knew that fingering, but I didn't remember that it was the letter E. So they'll have a lot of aha moments that will help them with harder music later on, and it will help them with sight reading. So keep them saying the letter names. It really helps. Very short, intense bursts of study work best for my students. I've taught all different levels, and 12th graders need a short time, 6th graders need a short time. Everybody that I've taught has benefited from this more intense, shorter times on scales. So you might stretch it out to 15 minutes if you're teaching something new, but you want to make sure that it's short enough where they can be intense for the whole time. And demand that they play the correct pitches. Don't let stuff slide. Don't do that. You've got to put your max energy into it all the time. Point out mistakes that you hear kindly, and also make sure that you're teaching with your eyes. You got to know the fingerings. You got to know the slide positions. You got to know which bar they're supposed to be hitting so that you can see it and not just hear it. Because especially sometimes we got 100+ kids in the band room. How are you going to know if a kid on the 4th row is doing it right? You can see, but you may not be able to hear that kid if the whole band's playing. So again, don't be Dr. Doom. Don't go in there and just only tell them what they're doing wrong and do it in a mean way. You can say what you mean without being mean. So tell them what they're doing well. If they get the first note right, great. If they get the last note right, great. Tell them about that. Tell them if they're a little more in tune than they were yesterday, or if their tone quality is a little bit better. Even if the scale still sounds like a train wreck, try to compliment them on the things that they are doing well so that they know they're not just total failures.